Carrie Lam stands firm over Palace Museum controversy.
Russia has clearly assumed an even more aggressive cyber posture by increasing cyber espionage operations.
US intelligence on collision course with Donald Trump over Russian hacking claims. And suspects charged in the United States over live Facebook assault.
Good evening. The Chief Secretary for Administration has revealed that the idea of building a local version of the Palace Museum was initiated by a top museum official in Beijing more than a year ago. Carrie Lam also stressed that the government's decision to seek the public's views over design and operations was not a knee-jerk response to all the criticism it has received. Rachel Leung has our top story.
For the first time, the city's #2 official, who also chairs the board of the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority, revealed how the idea of building a local version of Beijing's Palace Museum came about. Carrie Lam told a special meeting of the Lechko House Committee today that it all started in September 2015, during a chat with the head of Beijing's Palace Museum, Shan Jixiang. They discussed
so whether there is any space in WKCD for a museum to showcase the Palace Museum collections on a long-term basis. But how could we build such a museum to showcase the Palace Museum collections in our own way?
Lam then began exploring the idea with a group of Hong Kong government officials. In December that year, Lam submitted a written proposal to the central government and contacted the Hong Kong Jockey Club to see whether it would be willing to finance the project. Last October, the club agreed to provide $3.5 billion in funding. Lam stressed the plan had to be kept confidential before the two sides signed a memorandum of understanding, rejecting claims the scheme lacked transparency.
We have justification for keeping this confidential, and this is in the paper. After the MOU has been signed, we would be only delighted to make it transparent, and we are prepared to explain things to members. So I am here with a high degree of transparency.
Still, critics pounced.
Everything has been done in a black box. The people of Hong Kong knew nothing about it.
What about the design work? Why is it there are no tendering? My question is, why do you appoint Mr. Rocco Yim as an architect in such a hasty manner? Now, you've been a civil servant for 30-odd years, and you've been elevated to the position of CS. So why is it that you've forgotten all about the core values in Hong Kong?
The government will be pushing ahead with a 6-week public engagement exercise starting Monday to collect views on the design and operation of the local museum. But Lam insisted that the consultation was not a knee-jerk reaction to all the criticism. Rachel Leung, TVB News.
And there are media reports Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam will announce her resignation next Thursday to run for Chief Executive. Lam remained tight-lipped on the matter today. She refused to comment when questioned by lawmakers about the CE race. Lam did say she does not have any experience with elections. So far, retired Judge Wu Kwok Hing and New People's Party lawmaker Regina Ip have declared their intention to contest the election in March.
Meanwhile, the corruption trial of former Chief Executive Donald Tsang resumed at the High Court today. Tsang is facing 2 counts of misconduct in public office and 1 count of a chief executive receiving an advantage. High Court Judge Andrew Chan has reiterated his order for the media not to report certain details of the hearing so as not to prejudice the trial in future. The hearing will continue on Monday.
Turning overseas, the top U.S. intelligence official told a Senate committee yesterday that intelligence agencies are more confident than ever that Russia staged cyber attacks on Democrats during the 2016 presidential campaign. Meanwhile, President-elect Donald Trump, who has expressed skepticism about Russian involvement, has reportedly picked former Indiana Senator Dan Coats to be the next director of national intelligence. Alan Booknear reports.
Brushing aside Donald Trump's dismissiveness of intelligence gathering, James Clapper, the outgoing director of national intelligence, told the Senate Armed Services Committee there was little doubt of Russian involvement.
Russia has clearly assumed an even more aggressive cyber posture by increasing cyber espionage operations, leaking data stolen from these operations, and targeting critical infrastructure systems.
Clapper went on to say it was a multifaceted campaign.
The hacking was only one part of it, and it also entailed classical propaganda, disinformation, fake news.
The CIA said it's identified Russian officials who fed the hacked material through a circuitous route that made the origin hard to trace to WikiLeaks, which then posted the material on its website. This enabled WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to deny Moscow was the source. Clapper was asked by Republican Senator John McCain, a fierce Russia critic, if the hacking could have affected the outcome of the presidential election.
Certainly the intelligence community can't gauge the impact it had on choices the electorate made. There's no way for us to gauge that.
Clapper's testimony was short on concrete evidence, but it raised the stakes in the intelligence community's standoff with Trump. The president-elect will be briefed on the complete findings later today. Meanwhile, former Republican Senator Dan Coats is reported to be Trump's selection to be the next director of national intelligence. Coats served as a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee before retiring last year. If confirmed by the Senate, he would oversee the umbrella office created after 9/11 to improve coordination of U.S. spy and law enforcement agencies. Alan Booknear, TVB News.
And U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has threatened to impose a hefty fee on Japanese car maker Toyota if it builds cars for the U.S. market in Mexico. In a tweet, Trump said, "No way, build plant in the U.S. or pay big border tax." It's Trump's first blast at a foreign automaker after several broadsides aimed at American companies. Toyota made the announcement more than a year and a half ago, saying it would not take away from U.S. employment. Japan's chief cabinet secretary Yoshihide Suga defended Toyota, saying Japanese car makers will continue to contribute to employment in the U.S. He refrained from commenting on Trump's tweet.
4 black people in Chicago have been charged with hate crimes in connection with a video broadcast live on Facebook that showed a mentally disabled white man being beaten and tortured. The case has drawn the attention of U.S. President Barack Obama, who called it terrible and an example of the awful toll of racism.
It's a case that has shocked America. 4 young adults aged between 18 and 24 have been charged over the kidnap, torture and racial abuse of a mentally handicapped white man. Authorities say the African-American suspects tortured and tormented their victim live on Facebook, depicting acts of brutality that shocked even veteran police investigators.
Let me be very clear. The actions in that video are reprehensible.
The assault went on for hours until Chicago police found the victim walking along a street in a disoriented state. Officers were able to quickly arrest the suspects and charge them with hate crimes.
I'm pleased to announce that the investigation has concluded and charges have been approved by the Cook County State's Attorney for hate crimes, aggravated kidnapping, aggravated unlawful restraint, and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon against all 4 of the offenders in custody.
Investigators said while the evidence was graphic, the fact that it could be found on Facebook made it easier for them to make a strong case against the suspects.
They admit that they were beating him, kicking him. They made him drink toilet water. And then obviously the video where they're cutting a piece of his scalp. They then get aggravated at him, and that's when they tie him up, and that's the racial slurs and the the deference to his mental capacity starts coming out.
Outgoing U.S. President Barack Obama, who considers Chicago his second home, says the beating is a reminder of the toll of racism.
It's terrible. And so part of what technology allows us to see now is the terrible toll that racism and discrimination and hate takes on families and communities.
Still, Obama insisted that race relations have improved in the United States during his presidency.
Japan has recalled its ambassador to South Korea after protesters last week put a statue depicting a comfort woman outside the Japanese consulate in the South Korean city of Busan. The term comfort woman describes females who were forced into sexual slavery to service Japanese soldiers during World War II. The Japanese government also said its consul general in Busan would be temporarily recalled. Tokyo is unhappy because the two countries reached what was supposed to be a final agreement over the issue in 2015. The South Korean Foreign Ministry says it strongly regrets Japan's decision to recall the ambassador. It added both countries should work towards advancing bilateral relations based on trust, even when there are difficult problems. And still ahead in the news. Arrests in gold bar robbery case. 7 nabbed over money laundering allegations. And letters that show one happy mother known as Princess Diana.
Welcome back to TVB News. Police have arrested a man and linked him to a gold bar robbery case last year. Officers say he might have handled stolen goods. Winner Wong has the details.
New developments in a high-profile robbery case from late last year. According to police, a man and a woman were arrested yesterday. The 40-year-old male suspect was detained at the Shengshui MTR station. Officers say they found 2 gold bars on him. Police later raided a flat in nearby Choyun Estate and discovered 5 more gold bars there. They arrested a 63-year-old woman, the mother of the male suspect, who lives there. According to Acting Chief Inspector Wan Kai-ming of the New Territories North Crime Unit, the gold bars found inside the flat are of the size of a mobile phone. They were hidden in various places, such as inside mobile phone boxes and tissue boxes. Officers had to make use of metal detectors to find the bars. The woman has been freed on bail. In November last year, a van carrying more than 200 gold bars worth about $80 million was offloading on Anchun Street in Fanling. The 33-year-old driver, who was alone at the time, was robbed at knife point. The gang escaped with 81 gold bars. 5 suspects are believed to be involved. Police have confirmed the 7 gold bars found yesterday belonged to the stolen batch. According to Superintendent Lee Kwai-wah, the man who was arrested yesterday is believed to have handled and disposed of the stolen goods and might not have taken part in the robbery. Lee did not rule out the possibility of more arrests. Winner Wong, TVB News.
7 people have been arrested on suspicion of laundering millions of dollars using jockey club betting accounts. Evelina Leung tells us more.
One of the suspects was brought back to a Chaiwan flat for investigation. Authorities say they took action on Wednesday night. They arrested 3 men and a woman in To Kwa Wan and seized 7 jockey club account cards, account books, personal information of debtors, and about $230,000 in cash in the flat there. 3 others, 2 men and 1 woman, were arrested afterwards. Authorities believe 4 of those nabbed were core members of a loan shark syndicate. It's believed that over the past year and a half, They used at least 3 Jockey Club betting accounts to collect debts totaling more than $7 million. Police believe the gang chose to use Jockey Club accounts because the club's operating hours are long and they can launder and withdraw money during nighttime. Officers said they started this investigation based on complaints they had received from some of the debtors.
They report to us they cannot repay the interest and the debt. So we further developed the case because they repay the debts through HKJC accounts. And then upon reviewing and analyzing the accounts, we find that there are money laundering patterns.
Those arrested are aged between 27 and 58. Among them are 2 couples. And some of the suspects are said to have tried backgrounds. Evelyn Lang, TVB News.
The patient in Hong Kong's 3rd human case of bird flu in as many weeks has died from the H7N9 virus. He's the 2nd person to die from the disease in the city this winter. The 62-year-old man had travelled to Zhengzheng in Guangzhou last month, but said he had not come into contact with poultry during his trip. He developed flu symptoms on New Year's Day and was admitted to a hospital in Dongguan. But he discharged himself against medical advice on January the 3rd and came back to Hong Kong through the Lo Wu border. The patient was then admitted to Yan Shai Hospital on Wednesday. He passed away during the early morning hours today.
Overseas again, Nigerian soldiers interrogating captured Boko Haram suspects have found one of the Chibok schoolgirls kidnapped by the insurgents nearly 3 years ago. She's identified as Rakia Abubakar, seen here in the middle. She has a 6-month-old baby. Her mood is said to be serious and morose. Nearly 300 girls writing science exams were kidnapped by Boko Haram, a mass abduction that shocked the world. Since then, dozens have been released or escaped. Many of them have been married off to Boko Haram soldiers, and many others reportedly died in captivity. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari said Abubakar's recovery raises renewed hope that other captured girls will one day be reunited with their families.
To Mexico now, where protests and looting fueled by anger over gasoline price hikes have turned deadly. At least 4 people have been killed and authorities have arrested more than 700 others. At least 2 of the deaths were reported in the port city of Veracruz. Besides looting, protesters have blocked highways and blockaded gas stations in different parts of the country this week. Many Mexicans are unhappy with a 20% fuel price increase announced last weekend as part of government efforts to deregulate the energy sector. Despite the unrest, the president is standing firm. Enrique Peña Nieto said yesterday he would forge ahead with the deregulation scheme, which would do away with fuel subsidies and allow gasoline prices to be determined by prevailing international prices. He said keeping prices artificially low would mean taking money away from the poorest Mexicans and giving it to the rich.
Russia says it's withdrawing its aircraft carrier and some other warships from waters off Syria as the first step in a drawdown of its forces in the war-torn country. According to Russia's General Staff Chief, the Admiral Kuznetsov carrier and accompanying ships are the first to leave. But Russia's top general did not give further details on the force reduction, which follows an order by Russian President Vladimir Putin last week. Moscow has been a key supporter of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government and forces in Syria's devastating civil war. Last week, a ceasefire brokered by Russia, Turkey and Iran came into effect in Syria, and fighting has eased. A car bomb attack in western Turkey yesterday killed 2 people, including a police officer. Authorities say it could have been much worse. Suspected Kurdish militants clashed with police and detonated the bomb outside the main courthouse in Izmir after their vehicle was stopped at a checkpoint. 2 of the attackers were shot dead and the 3rd is on the run. Police seized weapons such as Kalashnikov rifles and hand grenades. The Turkish government praised the dead officer, saying he sacrificed his life to prevent a bigger disaster. OK, Tony, what finally tonight? Letters belonging to the late Princess Diana were sold for thousands of pounds at an auction yesterday. The correspondence was between Diana and her former head steward during the 1980s and 90s. In one, sent 5 days after Prince Harry's birth, Diana thanked Cyril Dickman for a card he'd sent during what she called this particularly happy time. In another letter, written in 1992, Diana said both her sons were enjoying boarding school, although Harry is constantly in trouble.
The letters that we are offering show a very personal insight to his relationship with them, particularly Princess Diana, I think, and her letters, which portray her very much as a mother and somebody we can all relate to when talking about her children being naughty at school.
And that personal insight ends our news tonight, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
Thanks for watching.
That's all from us. Have a great weekend. Good night.
Good night.